Welcome to Literary AF Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Literary AF Podcast. That's right, it's me, I'm back, Sheldon, the king, hero of the podcasting world. And who else is with me?
Oh, Danny. I'm Danny.
And we have some beef we have to clear on air.
Oh no.
I listened to those last two episodes and you guys didn't do any opening goof.
No, that's kind of your thing.
I get emails every day saying like, oh, I missed the opening goof. We're crying because there's no opening goof. That time you pretended to do a really bad Australian accent changed my life. I missed the opening goof. Like, people are demanding it.
I wanted to stay in my lane. Goofs are your lane.
Goofs and gaffs are my business. Yeah, I'm back, and we're here today to talk to you about...
Books?
Oh, I was going to talk to them about goofs, but yeah, books are good too. Yeah, you guys, so I listened to those last two episodes, pretty good. Kind of sappy romance stuff. So
Yeah.
we're here to talk about some real masculine, manly stuff of turning into a bug and having your family hate you. We're looking at the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Franz. This book is it's a novella, I'd say. It's like 40 pages.
I'd say that's like smaller than a novella, because I think novellas are like, there's like an actual number for it to really be a novella.
I feel like novellas have a maximum of 90 pages, but I don't know what the minimum is.
Well, why don't you talk about that, and I will look it up and we'll find out.
Okay. So it is a story about a girl who cried a river and drowned the whole world. No, sorry. Just testing your late 90s, early 2000s song knowledge.
Pop-ups, come on. A novella is a short book. As such, a novella is considerably longer than a short story, but shorter than a novel. A novella must be able to stand on its own as a book, but the exact word count is not set in stone. 30 to 60,000 words may be an appropriate length for a novella in most markets.
This would maybe be 30,000. I don't even think so.
So then it would probably be a short story.
I feel like 40 pages is too long for a short story, but maybe.
Short stories published on online literary magazines are often held to smaller word counts, sometimes as little as 1,000 or less. It's a blurry line, honestly, between short stories and novellas, but short stories are shorter than novellas. So I would probably say that's a short story.
Let's see if the copy I have of it.
Oh, here's a Wikipedia page on novellas. Longer than a short story, but shorter than a novel, somewhere between 17,500 and 40,000 words.
This might be 17,000.
Okay, we'll tentatively call it a novella.
At the end of the day, I don't think it actually matters.
Well, there's also apparently novelette.
Ooh.
Novelette is a range between 7,500 and 17,500 words.
I like novelette. Let's call it a novelette.
Novelette, okay. It is a novelette by Franz Kafka.
Yeah. Kafka is well known for... I don't actually know what he's well known for.
Honestly, I had not heard about him until you mentioned him, so I can't say.
Well, you've heard the word Kafka-esque, right? Like, things are described as Kafka-esque.
When anybody says Kafka to me, I think of the villain from Final Fantasy.
Kafka?
Kafka, yeah.
Oh, that'd be Kafka-esque.
Yeah. Well, that's the only thing that comes to mind, so I've never heard Kafka-esque.
Oh, that's like a word people sometimes say.
I believe you.
It's characteristic or reminiscent of the oppressive or nightmarish qualities of Franz Kafka's fictional world.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's mostly... Wait. I found something on Urban Dictionary, but that's not what I was looking for. This is a messy episode off the top. We haven't talked about anything yet. We're 5 minutes in. All right. So anyway, the story Metamorphosis. We can go through the plot pretty quick.
Yeah.
Kafka is... He was His life was 1883 to 1924. He was a Jew living in Germany, like right before, around the time of the rise of the Nazis, but died before the real bad stuff happened.
Okay.
He's known for writing a lot of short stories, a lot of like weird absurdism, and I don't know. This book is pretty peak absurdism. It's really fun. It'll take us about 10 seconds to go through the plot.
Yeah.
Man turns into bug. Family doesn't like bug.
Yeah, that's what I got from it. I just read the Spark Notes.
Yeah.
Because I've been in a bit of a reading slump in the last like week or so, and I feel like reading more stuff that's just not my kind of thing is just gonna make it worse. So, I'm trying to move on. So I just read the Spark Notes on this one.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of looked at the Spark Notes too, but I feel like it misses the tone of the book.
Yeah.
Because like the first chapter is really weirdly funny. Like it's made in 3 chapters. The first chapter, he wakes up in bed and he's a bug. I think the very first line is, when Gregor Samsa, that's the guy's name, Gregor, woke from troubled dreams one morning, he found that he had been transformed in his bed into an enormous bug.
Oh.
That's how it starts.
All
No
right.
explanation of how or why.
Just happened.
Just woke up like that. His stomach is itchy and he can't scratch it with his weird little legs. He's stuck on his back, and because he's a bug, he can't like roll over right.
Okay.
He's a traveling salesman normally, and he's so used to like living life on the road that he always locks his door at night. So his family are like trying to bang on the door to get in.
Right.
It's 6:30 in the morning when he wakes up, and he normally leaves for work at 5 a.m. or to catch the 5 a.m. train, so before 5 a.m. His family is freaking out because he's not at work. They're like, it's kind of like a farce of like them running around trying to knock on the door, him trying to answer the door, but he can't get out of bed. He answers them at first, but then as the chapter goes on, they stop being able to understand him.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure if they ever really understand him. There's one part where the chief clerk, some guy from his work shows up to be like, how come Gregor's not at work? It's already 7 a.m. Some guy from his work shows up, and he says, first you were giving us only yes or no answers, and now you won't answer us at all. But I don't remember him saying yes or no before that, so I don't know if they were just like not paying attention to what he was trying to say.
Right.
So he tries to open up. He hates his job so much, and he works for these like crazy people who like force him to be at the office super early. If he's not the first person in the office, he's in trouble. If he calls in sick, he can't call in sick. He's been there for 5 years without taking a day off. There's this one interesting line on the second page. It says, I haven't given up all hope yet. Once I have the money together to pay off my parents' debt, that should still take about 5 or 6 years. Then I'll make a change for a new job. So he's stuck at his work paying off his parents' debt.
Yeah.
His family is very lazy. They're all sponging off him.
Right.
And that's why they're freaking out that he's not at work yet. So it's kind of like they're running around, they're yelling, they're trying to get into his room. His sister's room is also attached to his room from the other side, like there's a door between them.
Right.
And so she's like yelling at him through her side while the family's yelling through the other side. Eventually, Gregor manages to flip over onto his stomach so that he can crawl around. Or no, he doesn't do that right away. He rolls out of bed and then he's still on like sort of his side. He like shoves his side up against the wall so that he can like kind of stand up normally. He can't open the door with his legs, so he has to use his mouth, like his weird bug pincer jaws.
Oh, okay.
He's trying to turn the key with his jaws, but then he hurts himself because he's like really squishy, really soft and squishy. He gets hurt a lot in this book. He tries to open the key, and then finally he gets the door open, and the way he has to open the door means that his family doesn't see him until the door is almost completely open, and then there's this giant bug right there. I don't think... At first they're just like shooing him back into his room, and the guy from work just runs out of the house. Gregor tries to stop him, but he can't like speak to him, so he just chases him. So just giant bug chasing him. His dad grabs some stuff like a walking stick or something and tries to beat Gregor back into the room. Gregor gets hurt a few times. They lock him back in his room, and that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, he is... chapter 2 is like less funny, but it's not super sad yet. It's just like he is lazing, or he's trying to like figure out how life as a bug works. His sister's like trying various foods. His sister decides to take care of him. The family doesn't react really to him becoming a bug.
Really?
The bigger reaction is more like, oh great, now we have to work. Because other than they're grossed out by him, they can't stand the sight of him.
Yeah.
But none of them are like, oh, I don't know what to do. Our son's turned into a bug. They're just like, well, this is life now. Living with this stupid, ugly bug. And so the dad goes back to work as a messenger or something. The mom starts sewing so that she can make some money. The sister gets a job somewhere, and then she also takes care of Gregor. So she's like bringing him food. She's bringing him, trying to find out what he likes. She brought him food he liked as a person, but now he can't stand it. So she starts bringing him like rotten fruit and stuff. Whatever Gregor's doing, it starts to smell in his room. I don't know if it's like supposed to be like, oh, he's a bug, so he stinks, or like he's just like leaving like weird like like substance and stuff behind him wherever he goes. So his room starts to stink. He tries to hide whenever his family comes in so that they're not scared by him. So he'll like hide under the bed, but there's not enough room under the bed for him. So every time he does it, it hurts him to go under there. But he said he'd rather like suffer than make his family uncomfortable.
Right.
He stops. I don't know if he stops eating food yet. At a certain point, he stops liking food altogether, and just like barely eats. He learns the joy of crawling on the walls. Like he finds out, oh look, I can actually like climb up these walls and climb on the ceiling and stuff.
Right.
And so it's like he gets like a brief fun period of like running around all day. And then his sister decides it would be good to take away all his furniture so that he could have more room to run around. But then his mom comes into the room and is like, well, if we take away his stuff, then like we're taking away everything that made him human. And he realizes like, yes, I don't want my stuff taken away. But he can't communicate that with them. So the sister's like, no, it's better if we take it. So she just starts stealing all his stuff. He has a picture on his wall of a lady who's wearing nothing but furs. So like, I don't know, whatever the 1920 equivalent of like Maxim would be. But he's got like a softcore pretty lady on the wall.
Right.
And he doesn't want them to take his picture. So he's defending his picture, but they're taking it as like aggressive, like him on the wall. The mom faints because there's a giant bug on the wall.
Yep.
The sister tries to get medicine to help the mom, and then he tries to help the mom too, but he basically chases the sister into the room and knocks over all the medicine, and like it falls on him and he gets hurt again because it's like caustic and he's getting stabbed by the like vials and stuff like this.
Right.
And then so he's all injured and hurt. The sister quickly runs and tells the dad. The dad comes and starts chasing him, and then Gregor doesn't go back to his room right away, and I can't remember why, but he just they run around the house for a bit, and then the dad starts grabbing apples and just throwing them at Gregor.
Apples?
And apples, just like a handful of apples.
Okay, alright.
And I hate this line so much, but I'm going to read it because it's very good. So, he had filled his pockets from the fruit bowl on the sideboard, and now, without aiming carefully for the moment, was throwing one apple after another. A weakly thrown apple grazed Gregor's back, but rolled off harmlessly. One that flew right after it actually penetrated Gregor's back. Gregor wanted to drag himself onward, as if the surprising and unbelievable pain might pass if he changed location. But he felt pinned down and surrendered, all his senses bewildered. So, an apple actually goes into his back.
Oh.
Lodges itself there.
What kind of bug is he?
It's unclear. the book shows a picture of like a giant beetle.
Right, but those have hard shells on them.
Yeah, but he's like, but you know you can squish a beetle if you hit it or step on it.
I mean, if you were to throw something, like say you were the same size as a beetle,
Yeah.
and then you threw like an apple at one of those beetles, I think it would just bounce right off of them.
Well, I guess like bugs tend to have like exoskeletons and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think he's meant to be kind of like a fragile, squishy beetle.
Okay.
And actually, we'll talk about what he's meant to be after, because
okay.
This book isn't just a man's a bug.
A Bug's Life.
Yeah, this is A Bug's Life, the original Bug's Life, the original B movie. Yeah, so it lodges into his back. Family doesn't want to touch him, so it stays there. So he just is permanently wounded with a rotting apple in his back.
Okay.
That's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 is actually surprisingly sad for what this story is, because the first two chapters are pretty like silly and absurd and weird.
Mm-hmm.
Third chapter is where it like, oh my gosh, this book becomes it. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's very good. So he's injured and he can no longer move around. He's barely eating at all. Oh, by the way, it's been like, this is months. Months have passed. So like, chapter 1 is all one day. Yeah. Chapter 2 is like, takes place over the series of like 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Chapter 3 is like, I think it's over about a month. But he's basically like decrepit now. Like he can barely shuffle around.
Right.
He barely eats. His family. So first they took away all of his furniture that reminded him home.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to make room for lodgers, because they need more money coming in because Gregor's not working anymore, they clear out the other rooms and just shove all the storage into Gregor's room. So first they moved everything so he had room to crawl around. And now they're like, they don't care. They're just like, shove all the stuff in his room.
Right.
But I guess it doesn't matter too much because he can't crawl around anyway. Though they hire a new housekeeper who's not afraid of him. And she basically just opens the door and makes fun of him and throws stuff at him and threatens to hit him with the chair if he comes close. So that becomes his life.
Right.
He, at a certain point, so the sister stops coming in the room. The sister had been taking care of him for a long time and coming in and cleaning and opening the window and all this stuff. She stops coming in the room completely, and instead they just start opening his door every evening a little bit so that he can like hear the family conversation.
Right.
And one night, so they have these lodgers there, and the lodgers are awful. They're just like ungrateful, like entitled kids. They're like constantly demanded to be taken care of, and like they want supper and they want this, and they demand entertainment. And so Gregor's sister starts playing the violin or fiddle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think a violin. And the renters so she plays it to entertain them, and they don't appreciate it at all. But Gregor is like, he's like, oh, he loves his sister. He always wanted to support her playing violin. He thought she was like a really good player, and like he just wanted to be like close to her while she was playing.
Mm-hmm.
So he like kind of scuttles out of his room a little bit. There's one line I really like that says, "Was he really an animal if music stirred him this way?" And I always just like that line, that like music is something that makes us human. Like, because this book kind of wrestles with the issue of what really makes you human, what makes like animal versus humanity kind of thing.
Right.
And so he is trying to get closer to her. He like loves the music. He's just sneaking out of his room a little bit. Then the lodgers see him, and instead of freaking out like, oh, I'm scared, or oh, get that away from me, they're basically like, oh, your house is so dirty, you have a giant beetle living in it, we refuse to pay you rent.
Right.
And so they start freaking out and trying to leave. The dad gets really mad. They have like the dad chases Gregor back into the room. Then the family has a conversation, and Gregor can hear it. And It starts with, "Dear parents," the sister said, striking the table with her hand by the way of preamble. "We can't go on like this. If you perhaps don't realize it, I do. In front of this monstrous creature, I refuse to pronounce my brother's name, and therefore I merely say, we have to try to get rid of it. We've tried all that's humanly possible to take care of it and put up with it. I think no one can reproach us in this lightly." So they're like, it's time. We need to get rid of our brother.
Right.
And I always thought there was something super like darkly funny and ironic about the line, "We've tried all that's humanly possible to take care of it," because they've been just awful to him the whole time.
Yeah.
But so they decide that it's time, that Gregor's ruined their life. They don't care if he knows it. And Gregor dies that night because he's like, he hasn't eaten in months. He's been sick. He's been injured. No one's been looking after him. And he actually is resolved that the next morning when he wakes up, he's going to somehow leave. Like he's going to open the window and crawl out the side of the building.
Right.
But just the exertion of that night, being chased back into the room, he ends up passing away that night. The housekeeper just picks up the body and throws it in the trash.
Oh.
Like it's nothing. And
Yeah.
then the family move on, and the parents both decide, hey, maybe we can marry off the daughter and her husband can start bringing us money. And so they kind of repeat the cycle of what they did to Gregor.
Right.
Of taking advantage of him, getting to pay for everything for them.
Right.
And that's the whole story. It's very short. It's kind of dark, but it's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot of subtext in it. You have the whole like idea of like the absurdity of life, and like just the idea of like, you know, his life is so ridiculous as like being forced in this job that he hates and being forced to work all day to pay for his parents who aren't like thankful or grateful for it. Like it's kind of like just this idea that he would have to take care of everyone, and that as soon as he can't work, it's like they're still okay, really. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like they're instantly homeless or they're instantly starving. They're all fine. But
Yeah.
they've convinced him to work his whole life to take care of them.
Yeah.
And also that he worked his whole life to take care of them, and then they wouldn't lift a finger for him. There's like kind of alienation and isolation going on of like, here's this guy like basically forced into one room of the house and totally ignored because he's different. I think there's some strong parallels to like how society treats like disabled people or like severely ill people, where like we kind of shuffle them off into their own corner and try to keep them away, like treating them as a burden rather as like a part of the family sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like, I don't know, there's so much I like. I always love a downer ending, so for me, the idea of him trying to listen to his sister play the violin only for him to die is very good. What's the word? Perfectissimo? Yeah, it's, so good. Danny, do you have anything you want to ask or add? Or?
I honestly don't know if you or Bro turned into a giant bug.
Mm-hmm.
I would just leave, honestly.
Just leave?
I'm done. I'm going home.
I think I'd be
going back to my mom's house.
I think I'd be weirdly okay with it if I turned into a bug.
Just turn into a bug.
Yeah. Still lots of other bugs in the basement. Good hangout.
Come downstairs and you're skittering across the roof.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my horrible ceiling, which is falling apart anyway.
You can get like up in between the boards though, and hang out.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that it's like basically just like a weird little thought of like, oh, what if a person turned into a bug one day?
Why did he turn into a bug?
Never explained. Never explained why or how. Just,
anybody else turn into a bug or just him?
No, just him.
Just him.
It's very like magic realism. I think because the way in the first chapter it talks about how he's not allowed to take a sick day, or if he tried to take a sick day, the work would hire insurance investigator to come in and just say that he was lazy.
Right.
I think what it actually is that Gregor becomes bedridden, and the bug is like more just like a metaphor.
Right.
Of like he is now like a useless like waste of life on the family. He stinks. He can't take care of himself. He is in bed. He's in his room all day. The family now has to work to look after him, and like eventually it's like, oh, the whole we've done everything we can to take care of him. No one would slight us if we got rid of him now. Like I think it's like a very like kind of dark and sad way of looking at like if the main provider of a family becomes sick and kind of turns into like this useless lump. Useless in like the money making sense, in like the capitalism sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually the capitalist stuff might have something to do with it too, because Germany at this time was like really messed up when it came to money. Like their economy was so screwed after World War One, and like the idea of like having to work to pay off your parents' debts is like a big thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything. We did this for university, and I can't remember what all we talked about in that class, but there's a lot of fun stuff going on in this short little story.
Interesting read, for
yeah,
sure.
For like, because I reread this before we did the podcast, and I pretty much I skimmed like a little part of it that I like remembered already, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I still did the whole thing in about half an hour, so it's definitely worth your time just for this short little weird read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? We're at about 25 minutes.
Okay. So we're getting there. Have you read any of Kafka's other stuff?
No, this book that I have is like a collection of his stories.
Oh, okay.
And most of them are like 9 or 10 pages long, but Metamorphosis is the kind of, it's the headliner.
Right.
It's the bigger one.
Okay.
I've been meaning to read In the Penal Colony, which is in here, but I've heard people talk about that one. Apparently it's also good.
Does somebody turn into a bug?
No, I don't know what that one's about.
Oh, I
Let's
assume
see.
a penal colony.
According to the note in this. Oh man, I should have read the first page. It's got interesting notes about Kafka's life, and talks about Metamorphosis a little bit.
Well, there you go.
And apparently, he also has a story in here called "A Report to an Academy," which is supposed to be witty and funny, but I haven't read it yet, so
all right.
I can't recommend it. Yeah, I picked this one because I knew it was short, and I'm reading David Copperfield by Charles Dickens right now, and it is 800 pages, and I knew I would not have it done for today's podcast.
It's a biggin.
Yeah, I'm halfway through, though.
Okay, you're getting there.
Yeah.
That's the name of a magician, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think the Dickens book came first.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure the Dickens book came first. Is that book about a magician?
No.
Oh.
Or at least not so far. Not the first 400 pages.
Well, I assume by 400 pages you would know whether or not it was, but...
Apparently it's largely autobiographic. Like, it's mostly... Like, David Copperfield is kind of a stand-in for Charles Dickens.
Dickens wasn't a magician, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He was a magician with words. What are you reading these days?
I've been reading a couple different things.
Okay.
I just finished an arc for a book called Trashed, which I'm going to talk about next week.
Fun.
I read a book called Priest by Sierra Simone.
Ooh.
I read a couple more Immortals After Dark books, which I have finally caught up on the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading the Brothers Sinister series by Courtney Milan.
Okay.
So I've been pretty busy.
Nice.
Pretty busy. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, I think we're getting time. Danny, where can people find us?
People can find us on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Literary AF.
Mm-hmm.
Our Gmail is literaryafpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter at LiteraryAFPod.
Ooh.
And did I say Facebook? We're on Facebook, Literary AF.
Very chill. Sorry, I just Googled. I was trying to Google the Metamorphosis to see if there's like any audiobooks online. Apparently there is one. It's an hour and a half long, read by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh.
So if you want to listen to Benedict Cumberbatch read you a story for an hour and a half.
I am way more into the idea of this book now.
I would let Benedict Cumberbatch read this for me. But also I found Thug Notes and Analysis, which is like a gangsta-looking dude.
Yeah.
Apparently
Have you checked any of his videos?
I've never heard of him until this very moment.
You should check out some of his videos. He's got some good ones.
All right, that's a tentative recommendation for Thug Notes.
Thug Notes.
Find us on the internets.
Sorted internets.
And we will get back to you next week when we talk about... What was that book again?
Trashed by Mia Hopkins.
Trashed by Miyamoto.
Nope.
All right. Peace out.
Bye.